All right. Hello once again. This is part 3 of our series following this Heartland Rasmussen poll that we have conducted over the past couple of weeks. If you didn't see our last videos, you should check those out. We go in a little bit more detail about the kind of the origin of the poll and how the kind of the details of it, a little bit more than what we're going to do in this video. So if you haven't watched those, check it out. We did one on climate change and one on police shootings. This is number 3 that is going to focus on a hodgepodge of questions, to use Justin's term from a previous episode, including assault rifle, violent crimes using assault rifles, or just rifles, period.
Just rifles, yep.
Okay. Well, I'm doing a whole intro thing, so don't interject. Health insurance coverage, national debt, and another one that I already burned the bridge, so I'm not going to ask Justin. So another question, but before we get into some of these results, I do have to put that out there that if you want to help us get this message, the Stopping Socialism message out there, we need your help. You could help very cheaply by hitting the like button, sharing the content, subscribing to Stopping Socialism TV. It's very easy things for you to do. If you don't do that, the Facebook and Google and and YouTube overlords will ensure that nobody besides you is going to see this video. So help us out if you can. So real briefly, before we get into some of the results of this, I just want to kind of recap just the idea behind this poll. So we asked a series of questions trying to see what respondents' favorite their media consumption patterns are, what channels they watch, how often they watch it, that type of stuff. And then we asked them a bunch of factual questions regarding stories that are in the news to see how disconnected from reality they are compared to the media source of their choice. So, Justin, which question do you want to start off with? Should we do the rifle question?
Yeah, let's do the rifle question. So we asked people approximately how many homicides occur each year in the United States in which the assailant uses a rifle, including so-called assault rifles. The reason why we asked it that way is because when you actually look at federal data, they don't have an assault rifle category because an assault rifle isn't really a thing.
Yeah, it's as if that term doesn't really exist.
Yeah, in the data, it really doesn't. It's all lumped under rifle. So the rifle numbers include assault rifle, what we think of as assault rifles, homicides, but they don't. It's not only assault rifles. So it was the categories were less than 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 500, 500 to 1,000, 1,000 to 5,000, 5,000 to 10,000, and more than 10,000. So when we asked people this question, the viewers who said that CNN, MSNBC, and CBS and NBC, actually no, CBS, NBC, and MSNBC, those are the three networks that were the viewers of those networks were the most likely to get the answer right. The answer is between 100 and 500 are involved. Or have homicide. There are 100 to 500 homicides every year involving rifles. And 30% and 31% of CBS viewers got that right. 27% for NBC. Those are the ones that were most likely to get it right. Fox News was, the other category, Fox News was the group of viewers that were most likely to get it wrong. Only 19% were answered 100 to 500. That's the right answer. And they were also most likely to wildly underestimate the number of homicides involving rifles. 39% of Fox News viewers said less than 50. And 62% said less than 100. So that includes 50 to a 100 and less than 50 together. So that's a pretty substantial number of people at Fox News who think that there are fewer homicides related to rifles than there actually are. I think that's worth noting. This is the question that conservatives were most likely, or viewers of conservative networks, I should say, were most likely to get wrong. Out of all the questions we asked, all the different categories, this was the one that they were most likely to get wrong compared to viewers of more liberal networks.
Yeah, and I'm happy that we're starting off with this question because it does show that we weren't just like specifically picking data out there to make the liberals look bad or something like that. So like we thought that there was a reasonable chance that Fox News viewers were going to get this one wrong, and it turned out to be the case. So it's good that we're kind of starting off with this one to show that it's a little bit, we're not doing like a slanted thing here. We're doing a pretty balanced poll, right? But on the other side of that spectrum, you will see that across the CNNs and the MSNBCs and the other various alphabet networks over there, that they were more likely to overestimate the amount of casualties as a result of these weapons, far more than the Fox News viewers, which, is also saying something, I'll say.
Yeah, without a doubt. One in four, essentially, CNN and MSNBC viewers said at least 1,000 homicides. So the real number is between 300s into the 400s, depending on the year that you're looking at. So saying at least 1,000 is off by quite a bit, and it depends on because remember, this is the ranges at the higher end were 1,000 to 5,000 and 5,000 to 10,000, and 10% of CNN viewers, for example, said 5,000. Or either said 5,000 to 10,000 or more than 10,000 a year were killed from rifles. And again, the real answer is between 300 and 500 or so. So these people were way off, way off,
right,
and thought that the numbers were dramatically higher than they actually were. So that is worth noting. But I think that this question does a really nice job in some ways of showing just how narratives in the news make, regardless of what kind of network you're watching, shape your opinion of the facts. It's probably unlikely that the viewers of any of these networks are seeing the actual number of homicides related to rifles on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So they're getting these opinions that they have based on narratives that these news networks are telling rather than the actual statistics. So at Fox News, where they're very pro Second Amendment, they're very pro gun rights, they're very pro gun in general, and I agree with all of that. They are less likely probably to give a narrative that makes it seem like there are a lot of homicides related to rifles. And on the flip side of that, if you watch MSNBC or CNN or ABC or whatever, you're much more likely to see a narrative that makes it seem like people are getting killed all the time from rifles, when in reality, it's actually kind of somewhere in the middle of those two things. So this question, in a lot of ways, of all the questions, did a really nice job of illustrating how that narrative issue is present both on the right and the left, and how it shapes both groups and their opinions or their understanding of the facts related to an important issue.
Right, and in tandem with this question, or I guess right after the question, we asked another question of approximately how many homicides occur each year in the United States in which the assailant uses a knife or sharp object. And It was the same ranges that we gave here. And the results were actually pretty consistent, regardless of whether you watch CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, or the alphabet networks. Only 12 to 18% got it right, and it looks like the vast majority, regardless of what news source that you watch, underestimated the amount of assaults that occur with those weapons.
Yeah, and I think this is actually a really important question. This one is the easiest one to gloss over when you're looking at all the questions, because the questions there's a lot of really sexy data and information here, but this one is actually one of the most important questions in a lot of ways, because this is an issue, knife attacks, right, is an issue that has not been politicized. Nobody talks about it, right? And therefore...
It's becoming more of a thing in the UK, but that's a whole other story.
It's a problem in the UK, but it's not a problem in America. And because it's not and it doesn't even matter if it's a problem or not. It's not politicized in America. That's the point.
Sure.
And it's not talked about. And because it's not politicized and because it's not talked about, the viewers of these networks are getting it right about equally, and they're getting it wrong about equally, because there's no political narrative to shape it, right?
That's a very good
point. That, I think, is the overarching reason why we're not seeing a difference on this question, but we are seeing it on guns. Why? Because on guns, there's a political narrative there, and there's an ideological narrative. on knives, there is no ideological narrative, so it doesn't matter, and therefore there isn't this misleading narrative that's going on, shaping people's opinions about it. This was also a really interesting question because Don't Watch beat out everybody. Everybody, 20% of Don't Watch got the right answer. That was by far that was the highest one by only a few percentage points over the next closest one, which was Fox News. But that tells you something. 30% of people, we'll say 20% of people who said they don't watch cable news said 1,000 to 5,000. That's the correct answer. And 20% of people who said they don't watch network news, same thing, 1,000 to 5,000, which is the correct answer. So in both of those groups, that was the category or the demographic that was most likely to get the question right. So that I think tells you a lot as well. Are you really being informed by television news properly? I would argue that there's a lot of data in here that suggests that depending on the issue, you are. But there are some issues where you're really not getting the answers from network television. You're just not.
Let's jump to this next question that is about the national debt. So we posed the question, at present, how large is the U.S. national debt? Half a trillion to a trillion, 1 trillion to 5 trillion, 5 to 10 trillion, 10 to 20 trillion. The correct answer, which is 20 to 30 trillion, 30 to 40, or north of $40 trillion. What is the national debt? And thankfully, this poll was conducted and came out when it did, because the correct answer, 20 to 30, or what we had labeled as the correct answer, 20 to 30 trillion dollars, is soon going to be outdated. Because as I'm looking right now, as we record this video, we are at 28 trillion plus. So give it a couple of weeks and we'll be north of $30 trillion.
Yep.
But this was one that we saw that if you were a viewer of Fox News, if you chose Fox News as your media source, your favorite media source, you were about twice as likely to get the answer correct than your CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, NBC viewer counterparts.
Yep. Yeah, it depends. It depends on the network, but yeah, it was substantially more in every case. And I think that's because, again, at Fox News, they're talking about the national debt. They're not talking about it these other networks. The thing that's really interesting is the number of people, the very large percentage of people who were wildly off on this question.
Yeah.
So on CNN viewers, for example, 29% of CNN viewers and 25% of MSNBC viewers, and actually the highest in this was CBS, was 32% of CBS viewers said the national debt right now is $5 trillion or less.
Yeah.
$5 trillion or less. So I looked it up. The last time the national debt was $5 trillion. Do you know the answer to this? I may have already told you this. You're probably going to cheat. Do you know the answer?
I think you did tell me, and I think it's in the late 90s.
It is 1995.
Oh, mid-90s.
That was the last time it was $5 trillion. 1995. So these people are literally, that was a quarter of a century ago. It was 25 years ago. These people think the national debt is what the number was 25 years ago. That is incredible. To put this in further perspective, the deficit, meaning just the amount of debt added in a single budgetary year, was more than $5 trillion just last year. So these people think the total debt for the country, for the entire history of the country, is actually less than what it was just last year.
Right. That's
how far off these people are. Okay, so this is wildly, wildly off. And if you extend it into $10 trillion, remember, the national debt is $28 trillion. Right. It was, for CNN, 49%. For MSNBC, 45%. For CBS, it was 51%. So these people are off by way more than even double. I mean, they're half. They're getting half, not even half the national debt right. They're that far off. So this really does show you a few things, I think. Number one, they're not talking about the national debt ever at these networks, because if they were talking about it, they'd give you the number. That's the thing. The only time they talk about it is when they give you the number, right? So they're not even giving people the number, more likely than not. And they're not even giving people the perception the narrative that it's high, that it's a problem, because why else would they come up with these figures that are so wildly off, $1 to $5 trillion? That's not even remotely close to right. And yet a large percentage of people said that was the answer. So that is really telling, I think.
One little kind of funny thing, and I want to move on to the next question here, is that CNN viewers were actually the most likely, and these are kind of smaller, margins of error here, so don't read into this too much. But CNN viewers seemingly the most likely to say north of $40 trillion. 9% said north of $40 trillion. There's just like, I don't know, a million trillion. That's how much the debt is. I don't know.
It is pretty amazing. And that was actually, right. That was the highest number for that. And that's pretty incredible too, because I think most people would say, well, it's got to be Fox News.
Right.
Because, they talk about the debt all the time. The stupid conservatives are always worried about the debt. But Fox News was actually least likely to say more than $40 trillion.
That's a good point. Yeah, out of all of them.
So what that tells you, I think, is that it's not just a narrative issue, because sometimes we see it's purely just, well, they're giving them a certain narrative, they're not giving them the number. I think in this case, what you're seeing is that at Fox News, they're giving them the number. And so people are more likely to get the number right because they kind of remember what the number is that they saw on television. And they know that it's not more than $40 trillion. So, right. Whereas I think the people at CNN are just wildly guessing. They have no clue. And that's why some of them think it's 500 billion to 1 trillion. 7% said that. And then 9% said more than $40 trillion. Well, these are two wildly different things. How is this possible that the same people are watching this network and have this totally... Well, because they don't ever talk about it. That's why. And so they're guessing.
Yeah, and the thing that, and I've mentioned this in the past 2 videos, and I'll say it again in this, it's just like these are the perceptions of reality that these people have. And the perceptions of reality are going to dictate, the politicians that they vote for and the policy prescriptions that they support or are against. So if you are, posed with some like a balanced budget amendment or something like that, and you think that the national debt is less than $5 trillion, then why would you be in support of that? You wouldn't. So it's like that's why these things are so important. And that's why we really wanted to drill down of like what media source is actually presenting people with reality, more or less on these questions.
Right.
And that comes a little bit more apparent in this next question, which is, what is the top marginal federal income tax rate? The highest rate one can pay in federal income taxes for Americans who earn at the top income bracket. This does not include state income taxes or payroll taxes like Social Security. So the options are 0 to 10%, 10 to 20%, 20 to 30%, 30 to 40%, 40 to 50, or more than 50%. Right. So the correct answer here, again, these are not opinion-based things. You could just look it up and find the answer. The range is that would be correct in this poll would be the 30 to 40% answer. I think the real answer is what, 36%?
I don't remember off the top of my head. We have it written down somewhere, but yeah,
it's 34 or 36 or something. Yeah.
It's somewhere in that range. Yep.
So the Fox News audience is the most likely to get this answer correct, with 36% choosing the correct range. That is compared to CNN's 23%, MSNBC's 22%. MSNBC was the worst when it came to this with 22%.
They're the worst when it comes to a lot of these questions, actually.
yeah, that's a pattern that you'll see.
They're actually worse than CNN on a lot of these questions. Very interesting. This is one of those ones where don't watch, beat everybody. This is another one of those ones.
40%. Great job. Don't watch.
Yeah. So again, are you getting the facts from television news? It's an important question to ask.
Right.
It's important.
And when you look at it, the Fox News viewers, 19% said between 0 and 20%. So those are the lowest 2 choices that you could have had, the 0 to 10, 10 to 20. So 19% of Fox News viewers, but that's compared to CNN's 33%. A third of CNN viewers think that the richest of the rich in America are being taxed at less than 20%. Even more alarming is 12% of CNN viewers think that tax rate is between 0 and 10%. Same with MSNBC. Right. 12% think that it is somewhere between 0 and 10%.
That's right.
Which again, it's like, so when that whole narrative of like these rich people aren't paying their fair share. Well, when you think that the rich are paying somewhere between 0 and 10%, of course you think that they're not paying their fair share.
Exactly.
Like that is like what we're presenting here. That is like the proof that we are presenting here with this data.
Exactly right. And remember, we asked very specifically top income tax rate. So we're not talking about corporations, and we're not talking about, tax write-offs for big businesses and capital gains taxes. No, we don't ask about any of it. We're asking about income tax, you know? And so it's a very clear question. And as you just pointed out, that's the narrative that they're getting at these networks, is people aren't paying their fair share. Now, what's interesting about that, and that's why so many of them believe it's 0 to 20%, when in reality it's 30 to 40%. But what's really important about this is not just that they're getting it wrong because the narrative is coming to them. It's that these people believe the narrative without knowing the number, which in this case is really, really important. Unlike with global warming or something where it's like, well, I don't know how much warming there's been, but it's a problem. I know it's a problem because I keep seeing it in the news. Here it's like, how can you even believe that someone's not paying their fair share when you don't even know what that number is? You have no clue. You have no clue what the number is, but you're like, you know what? I don't know the number, but it's not their fair share. I know that. Well, how? How can you know that without knowing the number?
This offers up an opportunity for conservative lawmakers that says, you know what? You're right. They're not paying their fair share at 0 to 10%. What do you think the fair share? Do you think it would be 35% is good? They're like, yeah, sure. That's 3 times what I think it is. Like, all right, under me, they will be paying that fair share.
Right. I mean, based on this logic, you could, based on these results, you could make the argument to 33% of CNN viewers and 33% of CBS viewers, so 1 in 3 of the viewers of these networks, that you're increasing people's taxes by making it 20 to 30%, when in reality you're giving them tax cut. You could actually make that argument. You could say to them, you know what? We're going to make it 20 to 30%. What do you think of that? They say, yeah, make them pay their fair share. And you're actually giving everybody a tax cut. You could actually pull that off based on these survey results. That's how delusional this whole thing is. So that one's a really good one. The next one is actually really interesting because we asked about the percent of the U.S. population that does not have health insurance or government-provided health insurance coverage. And we used 2019, and we specifically said prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, because we know that could throw people's perceptions of all of this off. So we just want to know what percentage of the U.S. population doesn't have health coverage of some kind. So that Medicare, Medicaid, private health insurance that they bought on an Obamacare exchange from their employer, etc., right? And this one's really interesting because basically, although Fox News viewers and viewers of other networks like The Blaze, Newsmax, etc., were the most likely to get this right, and Don't Watch was second place, which again is the pattern for most of these questions, as you'll probably notice. Almost everyone got it wrong by a lot. And even at Fox News and at other networks, the answer, the people who got it right, the percentage of people who got it right was not high. It was 18% at Fox News, 18% at other, and 15% of Don't Watch. That's compared to 7% for CNN, 6% MSNBC, 11% for ABC, and 8% for CBS, 7% for NBC. So
you're still
most people are getting it wrong.
2 to 3 times more likely to get it right if you're a Fox News viewer, but that's only
but 82% got it wrong still at Fox News, right? So it's not as bad as MSNBC, where it was 94% of people got it wrong, but it's still really bad when 8 in 10 people of your network get it wrong. And now, what is the answer? We actually didn't say what the answer is, right? The answer is 0 to 10%. The specific answer is between 8 and 9% in 2019. Didn't have health coverage. That might actually surprise some of you watching this. The fact of the matter is, more than 90% of people have health coverage in America. Mm-hmm. It's actually a very small percentage of the population that does not have health coverage of some kind. And most people don't know that. Most people think there's a pretty giant chunk of the population that has this problem. At CNN, It was 63% of CNN viewers said it's at least 20% of the population. Again, the answer is 8 to 9%. And they said at least 20%. That's 63% of CNN viewers. At MSNBC, it was 63%. At Fox News, it was 45%. It's pretty high of people who said 20% or higher. And at CNN, more than a quarter said it was at least 30%. So again,
how about
that's
MSNBC. 12% of their viewers think that it's north of 40%. Almost half the population has no health insurance, according to 12% of MSNBC viewers.
When in reality, more than 90% of people do have health coverage. So this is another one of those questions where, and when you translate this, which you're using percentages, but translate this to numbers of people, that's where it really gets crazy, right? When you say at least 20%, okay, so 63% of CNN viewers, 63% of MSNBC viewers, they say at least 20%. What they mean by that is, in a country of 330 million people, when you say at least 20%, you're saying at least 66 million people don't have health coverage. When in reality, the answer is actually much closer to what? It's much closer to 29 million people.
Sure.
So they're off by 30-something million people, at least.
Yeah, right. And like I said with some of these other questions, it's like this is the perception of reality that these people have that causes policy prescriptions like Obamacare to seem like it's needed. Because we're living in a world where we think that 30+% of the country doesn't have health insurance. So of course the government needs to come in and do something. So I don't know, maybe Obamacare is not great, but I'll support it or else 65 million people are going to go uninsured. Like that is that's the kind of the story that we are uncovering with these polls. Well, it's showing that people's warped perceptions of reality are driving these terrible policy prescriptions.
Well,
that's one of the takeaways I have.
Well, in the case of Obamacare, in fairness, it probably was closer to that before Obamacare went into place. But where people get that one wrong is that most people think Obamacare provided people with insurance. When in reality, the overwhelming majority of people under Obamacare who now have health coverage is through Medicaid. So they actually aren't getting insurance at all in under Obamacare. But there is no doubt whatsoever that if you believe... So, I mean, I think actually what this is showing is even worse than what you described, because what they're saying is, even after Obamacare, more than 40% of people don't have... So it must have been like 70% of people or something before we had Obamacare, because Obamacare was a big success to these people. So now it's like more than 40% still don't have it, or more than 30%. It's like, so let me get this straight. You think that even after Obamacare, we've got 4 in 10 people without health insurance, health coverage of any kind? So that means that these people were had the perception that it's like almost everybody, or more, 1 out of every 2 people at one point in time did not have health coverage. When in reality, it was probably more like 20% pre-Obamacare, and now it's somewhere, it was probably around 20%, something like that. I don't have the number in front of me. And now it's 8 to 9%. And the people who have been added are people who just went on to Medicaid. Had nothing to do with, very little to do with Obamacare exchanges. So this is one of those ones where everyone's getting it wrong because nobody is really giving the right narrative, which is, yes, we want to provide health coverage to everybody, without a doubt. And we have a great plan for that at the Heartland Institute, by the way, the American Healthcare Plan. Look it up. But that doesn't mean that that we should mislead people about the degree to which this is a problem.
Right.
We need to be clear, and we need to use facts when we're talking about these issues. Otherwise, people they're detached from reality when it comes to these things, and they're desperate, and they'll do anything in order to get a solution.
They'll follow charlatans like Bernie Sanders and the AOCs of the world that are proposing things like universal health care. And just like, in the first video we did on climate change, when you've got 50% of CNN viewers thinking that we're going to go extinct due to climate change. You're going to be desperate and follow anyone that could sell you a solution to prevent us from going into a Mad Max post-apocalyptic hellscape.
Right. And just one thing on the Bernie, because that's a great point about Bernie Sanders. Think about what Bernie Sanders wants to do. He wants to blow up all of the healthcare system, all of the health insurance system. He wants to take everybody and put them into a government plan. So 90-something% of people already have health coverage. And in order to help the 8 to 9% who don't, he wants to screw with the other 90% of the population. That makes no sense.
Right.
You don't help 8% of the population by making things worse for 90% of the population. How does that make any sense? Because that's not the point. That Bernie Sanders isn't interested in that. He wants everybody to be on the government plan because he wants government in charge of healthcare. Yeah. That's what he believes. It has nothing to do with helping the 8%. You can help the 8%, even if I was a big government person. I could just help the 8% by just giving them government healthcare. Why do I need to screw with everyone who has private healthcare too? Right. Because that's not really the goal. And sure. I think it's important, and you see it in these kinds of questions and the data related to the uninsured population.
Yep. So like I said, this is part 3. We did a video just on our climate change questions in regard to this. We did a video specifically on police or unarmed shootings, by police officers. So if you haven't watched those videos, go back and check those out. And then, of course, all of the notes and stuff that we're talking about, you can find in the video description. There'll be a link that you can click on. You'll find an article that kind of highlights some of the top line results of all the polls that we did. And you could also click on a link in that and find the full-on spreadsheet with all the crosstabs and everything. You can drill down into this information. There's a whole lot of information here, of course, that we couldn't fit into just one video. So if you're interested in all of the results that we've got, feel free to check those out. And if you find anything super interesting, something maybe we overlooked, I know that we focus primarily on just like the media consumption patterns and all of that in relation to the people's answers. But if you find something else, feel free to leave it in the comments. We'll check that out too. Justin, any last words you want to say about this poll before we sign off for the day?
No, sir.
All right, fantastic. Well, everyone, like I said at the beginning of this, we really do need your help. You have to like this, share this video, subscribe to our channel, Stopping Socialism TV on YouTube. You can also find all of our content on stoppingsocialism.com, or you can find it shared across the various social medias, whether it's Facebook, Stopping Socialism, Parler account. We have an Instagram account. Justin, where can people find you?
At Justin T. Haskins on Facebook, Socialist Twitter, and Parler.
Thank you so much. We will talk to you next time.